Welcome to Queued Up with Ziz and Pam, where we have powerful conversations with you, our audience, talking about what it means to be educated in the 21st century. Well, Pam, the shift in education is coming. It's here.
It's here.
I cannot wait to hear what you're thinking about the shift.
Yes. Well, particularly higher education. Let's talk about that, since it seems to be the gold that everybody, the golden ticket that everybody is reaching for. And yet that golden ticket isn't playing out in the real world, right? It's kind of leaving people in golden cages that they can't quite get out of with the debt that they have and the actual utilization of the degrees they have for most people to even get the degree. There's only 14 out of every 100 ninth graders that gets a degree and gets a job that requires the degree. And we have our whole system predicated on the fact that they go through this. So the cost makes no sense. The outcomes haven't shifted. And quite frankly, it's because the economy changed. And the opportunities changed to a more networked, a different kind of system where you get jobs and how you get jobs. And the shift is happening so fast that a 4-year degree is not keeping up.
Well, let me ask you a quick question. I mean, it's changing so fast that I think it's even hard for us who are even paying attention to this to see it, because it's just happening. It's like, whoa. And you know, you think about these things, and you know, like we've talked about before in previous episodes. I mean, you have companies like Apple, Google, Microsoft, who says we no longer need your 4-year degree. What we want to know is, what are your skills? What are your talents? Do you fit into our culture?
Skills?
Yes.
What are your human skills? What are your human talents? And then some technical stuff, but the soft skills are absolutely number one and the least available.
So let's talk about that. So because I love the fact that soft skills are becoming that much more. I mean, it's always been very, very important. And the hard skills are things that you can learn on the job. So when you talk about those soft skills, I think it's being able to listen at a higher level, at the empathetic level, being coachable, collaboration. There's so many things. So you tell me, Pam, I mean, so my children have already graduated college.
Yes.
What is it like for you right now?
Oh, we're in the muck. We're in the muck. And I think we're in the muck for a couple reasons. One is that we always based on what was and project forward, right? So we say, oh, well, the college degree worked for so long that that's what you need. Even though we're seeing how dramatically the world is changing and the diminishing value of that degree, especially with the cost of not only money, but time and emotional energy that we've taken away from these kids. But because it was something that worked for us, we say, oh, it worked for us, therefore it's going to work for our kids. And it's not, because the economy is changed. We've entered a new era. It operates globally. It operates in smaller bites of change. So agility is required. And quite frankly, the very fundamental nature of our education system, which requires compliance, raise your hand, got to go to the bath, everything has to be complied, right?
Yeah.
You don't question the teacher. Conformity, you do what everybody else does, only better. So you're constantly competing against them.
Right.
And individual achievement, which is we teach them, it's all about whether you get ahead. It's all about you getting the golden ticket. We're not saying, hey, it's all about you going out in the world and doing something to better humanity, right? And guess what? That is what gives meaning. In order to have meaning and discover meaning in life, you need to have freedom of choice. You need to have responsibility. You need to have the agency. And you need to be propelled towards something that is bigger than you. You need to know that it's not just about you. So the entire fundamental structure of our education system is exactly the opposite of the collaboration, the agility, the problem solving, the critical thinking, all of these things that we're talking about cannot operate in this very, very tight box we put our kids in.
So that all being said, I mean, that's a lot. It's like, you mean I didn't have autonomy? Oh, yeah, And it's interesting because I think Daniel Pink's book Drive,
Hmm.
that book's been out, that's 10 years old,
Hmm.
where he talks about autonomy. Um, well, he mentions passion, but he says it in such a little bit of a different way. Passion that drives you to
Right.
accomplish meaningful things.
Hmm.
And I always love the example. I mean, like we look at a company like Google. Gmail is here because they gave autonomy to their employees to
Right.
work on projects that interest them.
Hmm. That's exactly it.
Isn't that amazing? Like
Yeah.
they came up with another product, Gmail, because they were like, huh, let's give our employees autonomy.
Right.
Trust. They're trusting that the employees are going to do what's right for them.
Mhm.
You know,
And
so
that's the difference. And that goes back to even racism and what we're talking about. If
yes.
you're honoring the human being, or your teachers, the teachers that know that they need to have relationship in order for the kids to learn, the teachers that know that spending all the time so that they can ensure that they have a job and their kids are culturally accepted, they have to teach to the test. They know. I mean, educators are as trapped as students in this environment, but it really comes back to what we were talking about with our read format: responsibility, exploration, adaptability, and discovery of meaning. That we need to help less, empower more. We need to allow students to go out in the world, in a world we don't know, and figure it out and struggle and find it and embrace the uncertainty, because that is the future. There is no certainty.
I have a great example of that, and it's not. It's more an analogy of a dad. Say if there's a dad who has an only child, and I'm not going to name anyone because they might be listening, but the daughter is ready to move on with her life, so move out of her parents' home again and start her life with someone. And yet the dad is very upset because she is not following his his plan.
Right.
And the irony is this young woman is an athlete, and a highly successful athlete. And one of the things I think about is like when the coach comes up with the game plan, he works with the other coaches to come up with that game plan. It's designed around the strengths and the weaknesses of not only the team, but then the opponent's strengths and weaknesses, so that they can best achieve what's the outcome that everyone wants. But the most important thing about that is when you have a team, you need buy-in.
Yes.
And they
Yes.
need to buy into it. If they don't buy into it, you don't go and mope. And that's what sometimes happens with parents. So parents, the one thing that I'll say, and this is coming from me, and I'm sure I'll let you say to speak to that, but as a mentor, as someone who has 3 children, the one thing that I think I started to do better is listen and stay curious. And I didn't know what was best sometimes because they were discovering themselves, the D and read, that
Mm-hmm.
format.
Mm-hmm.
And I needed to allow, it was important for me to allow that to happen. It's sort of like sometimes parents are like, I don't trust that I've done a good job with them, which
Well,
has nothing to, which has nothing to do with the child. That's all
yes.
on you. That's the stuff you're carrying.
Yes, and it is exactly that. I mean, Dr. Shefali talks about that all the time. I mean,
Yes.
get your act together so that's the only thing you have control over. And really, it goes actually on a society level and a personal level. You can't police people. You can't. You can't take your children and sit down. You have to do this. I mean, there was a really cool program that I was so excited for my daughters to take, and phenomenal. And one of them started it, loved it, loved it, loved it. Even though the other one is about certification, everything I know, she's like, no, I'm not ready. I'm just not interested. I'm not whatever. And I'm thinking, even though I think, oh, wow, this is important, I had to honor that she's not there. She's not where it is, where she would get the value out of it. So me making her do it is not going to benefit either of us. And so honoring her choice and decision at this time, I had to do that. And the other, who I thought wouldn't want to do it, ends up loving it. And I'm like, well, so much for all my brilliance on figuring that out. Even though I know that the economy, like my girls, I tell them, it's not going to be enough or even valuable depending on what you're pursuing, to get a 4-year degree, spend that time and money, versus getting in and getting experience in certain things and starting out with some entrepreneurship skills. Because we have 3 economies now. We have a full-time economy that's still there, but losing steam, where you go to a corporation and the average full-time job for people under 34 is 2.8 years. Okay, for everyone, it's about 4 years. Okay, so we are not going to be able to be under the umbrella of a corporation. Corporations are vastly decreasing in their structure where you move up a ladder. It is flattened out. They hire for expertise, and they pull a lot from the freelance or gig economy, which we're going to see even escalating. Already the gig work was 3 times full-time work, and now it's going to explode even more because companies probably won't be able to afford some of all the soup to nuts stuff, which again pushes the issue of how do we provide healthcare at a community level, not a business level, so that we can adjust to this. And then the third economy is the sharing economy. We have created an economy just in the past 10 years, or since 2007, so that 10 to 15 years, where the sharing economy is something that is a way for people to earn money, and they'll be in and out of all of them, and they have to know how to operate it. And our education system prepares them only to go into the most declining economy there is, which is to be dependent on a corporate full-time job, which is not going to keep them throughout their life. It's lifelong learning, and there's a lot of exciting things that are happening there that are changing that we're going to definitely probably get into in the next episode.
Well, what's interesting, all that you said, so what you have the 3 economies. I'll go backwards. So the sharing economy, the gig economy, and for lack of a better word, the dying / corporate economy that used to take care of all of its workers. And when you think about that, so when you think about the latter of the 2, the gig and the sharing, soft skills become that much more important, because you need to be able to communicate what your skill sets are. You need to know how to collaborate. You need to know how to network. That means if when we were just talking in a previous episode about racism, or let's use a different word, positivity, my strategy, everyone. if we talk about inclusivity, which means, wow, if I'm aware of the different skills and talented individuals that are inside my network and outside my network, then I can bring someone into my corporation, my smaller corporation, that can benefit me. So being racist or prejudiced isn't going to help me.
No.
It's going to hurt me in the long run.
No, this is true. That's a great way of looking at it.
Yeah, and that's what's so interesting, is like when you think about it, when you think about it from a systematic standpoint of racism, you're like, you brought these individuals over here, they contributed to your economy in such a big way that you didn't pay them, and then you didn't help them get started, but yet they still survive. So there's something about these individuals that they're strong, they're hardy, they can adapt, they can do all these different things. Well, if they were able to continue to do all these things, they could make the economy that much more better for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and together doing it, right?
Yeah.
And together doing it. I have to say, I'm a part owner in a restaurant, and it was started by 2 immigrants, one from the Dominican Republic, one's from Morocco. The most amazing human beings I know. They are fabulous managers. I play my little role and get out of the way because they are so fabulous and they inspire me. And I think that is one of the things. The thing that breaks my heart is how many kids sit there studying for tests, preparing for standardization on the SAT or ACT, doing tons and tons of homework on content that is so outdated, because by the time 20% of all our data came into being in the past 2 years. There is no way that those tests can do that. So we have them spend all this time, incredible money. I mean, I love sports, but sports 7 days a week is ridiculous. We don't allow the time for them to develop relationships, multi-generational relationships, multi kinds of experiences, all of these things that allow them, as you're talking about, to develop the networks, to develop the soft skills, because you can't program soft skills into somebody's brain. It is who they are and how they connect with the outside world. And they will only discover that through experience. We as parents and as educators and as communities cannot mold, shape, paint the canvas of them. We have to empower them to discover it in themselves.
It's so interesting you use that as an example. It's such a great example, because I just remember, and I know I've said this before, so I'll just say it again. I remember being a high school athlete, so graduating in June, going off to the University of Maryland in the fall. So of course, when you're an athlete, you start a little sooner, especially with football practice. So it's August, and I happened to run the fastest 40 time. So of course, there was a little bit of pressure. Actually, a lot of pressure. and one of those individuals on our team, who happened to be the quarterback, he had more confidence probably than the entire campus. The problem with that is he couldn't gift that confidence to me. So I wasn't ready yet. I had the physical talents, but I wasn't ready mentally and emotionally. And I just had to go through the process. So when you talk about the experiential learning, that's the beauty of it. So when a child is allowed, when they're empowered to go out and talk to someone in their neighborhood and says, hey, you know what? I see you have a garden. I can help you weed that garden. Oh, really? Okay, cool. Let's do that. And they're learning from another person in the neighborhood. They learn that there are other individuals who are safe. And you can learn from those other individuals, because there's going to be really cool conversations that'll happen.
Mm-hmm.
And the benefit is it's immeasurable.
Oh, it is, but they need the time to be able to do that.
Exactly.
They're doing that with empty lots in Chicago and also Detroit, where they're developing these community gardens where people are coming together to grow and to weed, and just the earth, touching the earth. And it's considered sacred. And it's interesting, because they think the safety is to keep your kids home or whatever, but actually eyes on the kids in these bigger, which is why they put windows on the first floor that are bigger, looking out, paying attention. We want to create safety. We create safety by not isolating and hiding away, but in fact, coming together and experiencing community with each other.
Right.
Yeah.
Communities do a great job of actually policing themselves.
Oh, they do.
Yeah.
They do.
I mean, I've listened to former chief of police officers, and they said, when we used to walk our beat, somebody in the community would be like, hey, they would point to the house that we needed to visit, because they don't want those individuals in that community either.
No.
So that's the funny part about it. So I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, but basically what it comes down to, though, is those officers, when they were walking their beat, had a relationship with the community members. Mm-hmm. They got to know them. They know they knew the individuals. Those individuals knew them. They knew how to help them, so.
Well, we're seeing the calls for this now with all the riots and racism, where people are the leaders and the protesters are saying, stop, we want to send a message, but we can't destroy our own businesses. We can't destroy our own people that are trying to support us and who've just come through a pandemic. I mean, talk about heartache. But again, so that is them, within these organizations that are trying to empower people through this movement, to also have people have responsibility for ensuring that it doesn't be something that delves into chaos.
But what's interesting, though, like when you think about it from this standpoint, and it's an accumulation of not listening to the individuals who are going through hardship. So if we take that, so parents, if you take that with your own child, when you're not listening to your child, that child is going to act out sometimes to get your attention. And if you never give that child attention, they tend to have something down the road will happen, because you're not giving that child the attention they need.
Exactly. And I think that's what I used to tell my girls, that everybody's a pain ball. You know, as human beings, we're pain balls. And as that pain grows, it has to go somewhere. It either gets discharged outward in aggression or bullying or anger, or it goes inwards and we numb ourselves, or we, you know, the eating disorders, the cutting, that pain, that as we pressured this whole generation of kids through the system to fit in, is just not well. And I think as parents, we have to look and advocate for our kids to be who they are,
Right.
to, and also this goes to the positivity thing. While I agree with positivity, I also agree that you have to embrace the struggle. And that's probably the hardest thing for, you know, parents to look at our kids struggling, but it is in the struggle that they grow. And it is in the pushing, it's what will propel them forward. And you need that struggle, you need that tension. You know, this is something Viktor Frankl always preached, that, you know what, while you might need equilibrium in your mind, you know, in your emotions and in your body and your health or whatever, you do not want it in your conscience, in your, you know, human spirit, what he called the noetic dimension. That tension is required to push you towards goals. And in that, you need patience, you need struggle. So saying that you always just have to shift to positive, I agree that you can look at things, but you also had to accept that the struggle is a part of it and is a necessary component to growth.
Well, what you just said is this. So if you know, to take my own personal story from my incoming year at the University of Maryland, where I'm the fastest guy on the team, I had to go through the struggle
Mhm,
of getting better. So it
mhm,
put that tension on me so that I could say, hey, you know what? I need to practice X, Y, Z in order to get better. So the struggle is real and it's a part of how you grow. I
mhm,
think the chapter in Napoleon Hill's book, You Can Perform Your Own Miracles, one of the best chapters of all
mhm,
time on struggle.
mhm.
What you just shared with Viktor Frankl, that's awesome. But it's clear struggle is good.
So how do we
It's
allow it? We don't allow it for our kids. We're trying to, I wrote a blog about this, modern parenting, you know, only on the right, you know, adding things only on the right side of the balance sheet, that somehow if we have them, you know, do right, do all the extracurriculars, get good grades, whatever, that they're going to go out in the world and be really successful. And guess what? To be a whole human being, you need the struggle. You need to test things. They have to go, and this is why play is so critical, and why
yes.
playing as a young child is essential for social skills later on.
Yep.
It is essential that they go on the playground and they get their feelings hurt and they hurt somebody else and they figure it out and they learn from older kids and they learn from younger kids, and they experience all those things as they get perspective. So you can't just teach them only to be good. You know, unfortunately or fortunately, as humans, we kind of have to test by sometimes not being good, right? The little 2-year-old that's running and you're like, stop, you're going to fall. Well, guess what? Fall next time, self-control, right?
You know, it's interesting. I just met a woman in the neighborhood who has a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old. This young man is so energetic. And I said to the mom, I said, you know what? You're going to need to stay in shape so that you can stay with him and allow that curiosity. He is so observant, asking such great questions all over the place. I was like, wow, this is awesome. I'm so glad he's your child.
Well, it's why creativity declines so much from the young age to older kids, is because then we channel them into a certain way they can think. So we teach them, this is what you should think. There's a bubble that goes, there's a finite answer to everything. You fill that in, and that's going to be great. But we don't teach them how to think. And guess what? We just entered an era that is really going to be turbulent, which is really going to require that they know how to think, that they need to know how to navigate without us. You know, I always said my job as a parent was to teach my daughters to leave me, was to go out in the world and be good people, was to go out in the world, not to come back and benefit me. I mean, I hope they want to come back. I hope they want to bring the grandkids, all that kind of stuff. But really my role is they were through me out into the world. And they taught me. They are my greatest teachers, by far. I mean, and it's
Yeah.
been such a humbling thing for me to shift from, oh, I've got to teach you, which of course I did. You know, it's like, oh, this is my job, that is to program you to do all these good things and always be positive. You know, and guess what? No, it was to learn to allow them to become themselves and to honor that and to not to know that I don't know, and how that's so hard, and to watch the struggle. And that's the hardest part is
Right.
to watch the
Right.
struggle and to watch these periods that I allow, uh, and because I can't control whether or not, I need to teach them to make decisions, and a lot of those decisions are going to be not decisions that I would make, but it does take them to the next place. And I have to say, they all turned out better than I thought they would even turn out. And I love them so much. And it's so fun to have these relationships as co-learners with them or
Yeah.
co-learner with them. And yeah, my daughter the other day was just asking me, I want to do this, that, or the other, and whatever. And I, didn't really agree. I said, I don't agree, but you are an adult now and you have the power of that choice. I have to honor that. But, here's my say in it. Like, since you're asking me, and if you don't ask me and you do it anyway, it's, I hope that their basis is strong enough that those decisions are always towards something bigger than themselves, that
Right.
it's about being responsible and having the control, but I allowed it. I never tracked my kids on the phone to see where they were. So you have to be home at 11. Here's your curfew. If you weren't home, we dealt with it, and which I have to say there weren't many times, but I gave them the freedom to make the choices, decisions, mistakes, stupidity, all the things that happen when you go, you know, I was like,
So it's interesting, in talking about the shift in the higher education. So what we're really talking about is flexibility, adaptability, fluidity. It's dynamic. Um, it's the essence of being human.
mm-hmm.
Empowering. I mean, it's all of those things. So parents, we know it's not easy. It's challenging. It's
Mm-hmm.
challenging. It's hard. And it's interesting. I like to think about this. If we think about energy. So if you think about a male and you think about a female and what they bring to the table and how they view things, because we will view it differently. So I see a young man riding his bike and he falls and tumbles. Am I going to run over and pick him up? Probably not. It doesn't mean that I'm not as nurturing as the mom who may run over and pick him up and go, "Are you okay?" And we as dads might go, "Hey, stop, hold it, let him. He will let the struggle happen.
Mm-hmm.
Let it happen." It's literally, I saw this on Instagram, I guess a week ago. And it was a young man. He had put his head in between two bars,
Oh yeah.
and the dad's like, "All right, trying to pull and this, that, and the other." Just the little boy is crying, and then all of a sudden, the little boy goes, "I know how to get out of this," and he steps through and he gets out.
Oh, funny.
And he gets out. It's so fascinating to watch because it
Yeah.
went like, "Oh my God, what are we gonna do?" The dad's, he's trying to pull iron bars, and the young man's like, I know how to do it after he stopped crying. So what I'm saying all of that to say this. So sometimes what happens is our amygdala, when I'm talking to students, I call it the Amy G Dala, but we're really talking about the amygdala, the area of the brain that talks about fear, freeze, flight, and a really important area. Sometimes what happens is when everything goes there, we just need to take those deep breaths so that we can settle down and access the other parts of our brain so that we can process the information and what's actually happening.
Yeah. And I think even as parents, and I think we haven't really talked about higher ed, we keep trying to get to that point. And I think what we're saying even before that, so we'll do our next segment on what's happening in higher ed itself, but we're saying that we need to look at each of our children because now we have a multitude of pathways. We want them to think, we want them to be agile, we want them to have the soft skills. And when they decide, college is an if and when proposition. If it's the pathway that's appropriate for their child, if they want blockchain and cybersecurity, it's not. If they want to work as an electrician or a airline pilot, whatever, it's not. If they want to be a professional in some of those things, that's required right now. But they have to know who they are and what they're interested in before we spend that kind of time and money. So I think on the next segment, we can be talking more about what's happening right now in higher ed and what some of the projections are. But in the meantime, as parents, we're talking about honoring and allowing and following our children's lead as they navigate, because guess what? This is their life.
Right.
You know, we have them for 20 years, 18 years, and then boom, although now we have them for 30 years, and then hopefully boom.
Right. But you really there's a really, really important point, is like really honor them and listen to them. And that's what a lot of students have said to me, parents. They've said to me, parents are not listening. And consequently, because you're not listening, they will eventually stop sharing. And then they will go to their peers for information. And we all know what that can lead to.
Well, and the peers become important. It's true. And I think that the thing is that we as parents have to acknowledge that we keep trying to shape them based on a system that is no longer there. I mean,
Yeah.
we do not have that corporate, and we haven't for decades, FYI. You
Right.
know, we just keep assuming that what worked for us or what's worked in the past goes forward. And that is not true. So now going forward, what do we do? And what is it looking like in some of the traditional channels that we relied on? What's happening there? And, you know, I think we just have to keep talking and getting educated. So we'll be talking about that in our next segment.
So as always, we ask you, if you have anything to share with us, please do so. If you agree, if you disagree, I hope you disagree. I'd love to hear your take on this. So please
Yeah,
share your
it's
comments,
important.
your
It's
feedback.
valuable. Yes.
Absolutely. I mean, that's how we learn. That's how I learned. I mean, that's important. So, you know, I know we've been talking about corporations, the three different corporations,
Three economies, three
different
different economies.
economies.
Yeah.
And my brain's moving so fast, I need to breathe myself. But the three different economies, corporations, the gig economy, and the sharing economy. So yes, the shift in higher education is on. We'll talk more about that in our next episode. So again, thank you for listening. Thank you, Pam, again, as always, sharing great information. I feel like I can't wait to meet your daughters in person.
Oh, they're fun.
I know, but because of all the things you talk about, it's so cool. I think that's also a beauty. Before we end, the because of social media, what it allows is for us to get to know one another prior to actually meeting in person.
Mm-hmm.
And what I always do, what I tend to do, especially individuals who might be on a different coast or they're not in the same geographical location, is when we do meet, I'm like, wow, I feel like I've known you for years. And it's
Yeah.
because you share so much information, and that's the beauty of technology and what's possible.
Oh, it's true. Even the Zoom. Ziz and I have never met in person, ever. I mean, it's hilarious. So we've just come together over these things and we're having a blast.
Yeah.
We hope you are too, because it's so fun to just come at this from different perspectives, so many, that it's really been a fun journey.
Yeah. So again, everyone, thank you. Please share your comments with us. Thanks for joining us on Queued Up with Ziz and Pam.